Yep, we're live. Hello, everyone. Good morning. So today I will be speaking about the Weltenbeklavier by Johann Sebastian Bach. If you have comments, please, or questions, leave them in the comments. I admit I'm just a tad bit nervous because Bach makes you feel very naked. His music is incredibly difficult and complex, and if you are not impeccably prepared, you can always fall into some kind of rabbit hole and then slip and break your neck. So I hope that's not going to happen to me today. This is book one of the Weltenbeklavier in the beautiful edition by Henle Editions with fingerings and commentary by Andras Schiff. If you want to, in these weird, strange times, want to spend 2 hours worthwhile with just some absolute beauty and immerse yourself into this music, go find his live recording on YouTube. He played them for the, what's it called, in London, the proms. He played the whole first book a couple of years ago without intermission, 24 preludes and fugues, over 2 hours of music. From memory, and it is absolutely astonishing. It's gorgeous and beautiful. And then the next year he did the whole thing again with the second volume, with the second book. So let me first introduce what this incredible work is. So Johann Sebastian Bach, one of the, if not the greatest composers of all times, writes in basically all genres, instrumental and vocal, except opera, and leaves us a plethora of keyboard music, from the simplest little minuets all the way to the Art of the Fugue, to the Weltenbeklavier, to the Goldberg Variations, to some of the most complex and intricate music ever written, ever composed. At the time, people were experimenting with what is called the tempered tuning. Up to that point, if you tune a fifth as a pure fifth, and I'm going to make this short, and you can look this up. There's internet. There's all kinds of articles and comments about that. But if you tune a fifth as a pure fifth, there are certain keys that you won't be able to play because they sound ugly. A flat major is one of those examples. A flat major does not sound good. Any keys with a lot of accidentals will not sound good. So at the time, in the early 18th century, they started experimenting with modifying tuning so that you could play all the different keys. And so Bach writes a compendium of preludes and fugues in all grammatically possible keys. So C major, C minor, C sharp major, which has 7 sharps, C sharp minor, D major, D minor, and so on, all the way to B major and then B minor. So 12 major and 12 minor keys, 24 keys in total. And he writes a prelude and a fugue for each one of them. And probably the most famous of those preludes, one of the most famous pieces of all times, is the very first one. This is the famous prelude, and it goes to show that you don't have to write a beautiful melody in order to write a successful piece. The fugue that comes afterwards is already one of the most complex of all of them. It starts out with this theme. And so on. Okay, so then let's get into the fugues themselves. So there are 24 fugues in each key one, C major, C minor, and so on. What is a fugue? So a fugue is not a formal design. It is a compositional technique, or even something more of a texture, so to speak. It is a counterpunctual piece. That means that you have individual voices that are all equally important. So you don't have a melody and accompaniment, which you have, for example, and so on. You have a leading melody and then an accompaniment, in this case an Alberti accompaniment, that sort of delineates the harmony to accompany the melody. Here you don't have that. Every voice is equally important. It doesn't mean that they're independent from each other, because of course they react to each other, but every fugue starts out the same way. You have a fugal subject or a fugal theme, that's this in this case. And it starts unaccompanied in one voice. Then a second voice comes and plays the same theme a fifth higher. A third voice comes in and plays it an octave lower. And then a fourth voice in this case comes in and plays it again. So, this is how it starts. Then the second voice comes in with the theme, and the first voice now plays a so-called counter subject, counter theme. So, this happens. Second voice comes in. So this counter subject or counter theme can either accompany the theme every time it shows up, or sometimes when it shows up, or it can never again be heard. And Bach does everything with his fugues. Every fugue starts the same, with one voice playing the subject, then a second voice coming in a fifth above or a fourth below. Then if it's a three-part fugue, a third voice. If it's a four-part fugue, a fourth voice. And if it's a five-part fugue, which he also writes, a fifth voice. The voices in those fugues range from two voices, the E minor fugue, to five voices, the C sharp minor and the B flat minor fugue. I want to focus, though, on one specific fugue, which is the B flat major fugue, which is fugue number 21. I'm going to play the theme, and then I'll talk some more. That's the theme. Starts out in the soprano, in the first voice and the top voice. Then the second voice comes in. Then the third voice comes in. we have the fugue complete, the exposition, so-called exposition of the fugue is ended, when this theme has gone through all three voices. So what fascinates me about this fugue is how Bach builds the theme. You have all kinds of different themes. For example, the C-sharp minor fugue, the theme is just a few notes. You find it. That's it. I played you the C major fugue. A special one is the B minor fugue, the very, very last fugue. It goes like this. Not only does it modulate from B minor to F sharp minor, this theme, but also it contains all 12 notes of the chromatic scale. So it's a fantastic completion of this cycle of all chromatic keys in this volume, in this Weltime Klavier. Very, very unusual to do this. One more theme, just because to show you the variety and the incredible breadth of expression that Bach composes just in the themes alone. The B flat minor theme. That's it. So here's the B flat major theme. It's a very happy piece. It's a happy theme, and it's long. It's kind of like a dog running around having fun and playing. Sorry, put this way. Running around on the beach or something and having fun. So, question is, how is this theme built? Because Bach sometimes, you have the feeling, throws a couple of notes together and says, I'm going to make a fugue out of this. And in other cases, he constructs the theme from the beginning incredibly carefully. This is one of those fugues. So listen to the theme, the head at the beginning of this theme, which is this. So we have a total of 6 eighth notes, starting with the rest, and then the 6 eighth notes as a pickup to the next measure. 1, 2, 3, 1. So both the rhythmic impulse and also the notes are important. One more time. 1. That's the first measure. The second measure is this. It's very clear that those are closely related. So let me show this again. This is the beginning. Then this is a variant of this. So I could play the theme like that. As a sequence. Sequence, but with a variation. Now, he takes this variation and constructs the rest of the theme with it by turning it on its head. This is the variation. This is the continuation of the theme. This variant turned on its head. So we have the first motive, a variant, the variant turn on its head and repeat it. So all of the theme is constructed out of this, the variant on its head, and repeat it. So if you have seen the title of my little presentation, From Acorn to Oak, you know where I might be going with this. Here's your acorn. Now it's going to start sprouting and growing bigger. Now, of course, the second theme comes in and does the same thing. And the third comes in. Variant on its head. Repeat it. So far, so good. You have fugues where the theme comes at the beginning in all three voices or four voices, depending on how many he has. And then you don't really hear much of the theme anymore, and you have all kinds of other music. And then maybe at the end, he brings the theme back in some way, shape, or form. You have other fugues where nothing is really ever done without the theme. The C major fugue that I played at the beginning, and so on. So, like I said in the C major fugue, you have the theme all the time. Like from the beginning to the end, there's hardly a measure where there is not a theme present in some way, shape, or form. Sometimes even kind of as a canon and so on. And in other fugues, like I said, you have the theme at the beginning, and then you don't really have the yes, okay, it's working. You don't have the theme anymore at all until maybe the end. In this piece, the theme is almost ever present in one voice or the other. So that means that a lot of that material already that's in the piece itself can be traced back to, because whenever you have the theme, at least one of the voices is playing something that lets itself be traced back to that little acorn. Okay. So, but of course, we're not done yet. We have a so-called counter subject. Remember the counter subject that I talked about? Sometimes this counter subject that happens the second time that the theme is played. So the second theme entrance, the first voice continues with the counter subject. Let me play this for you. Here's your theme. Now the second voice comes in with the theme, and the top voice, the first voice, continues with the counter subject. So there you have it. That's the theme plus the counter subject. I'm just going to play the counter subject by itself. This is the counter subject. Would it surprise you if I told you that I can also trace that back to the beginning? No, of course it would not. So the counter subject starts. Let's take those notes. One more time. Counter subject starts. And then we have this. That's the second measure of the counter subject. So one thing that is immediately clear is that this and this has the same rhythmic impetus, the same rhythmic shape. But it goes further than that. here in this theme, you have this going up and back down. It's a second, it's a step. Step up, step down. In the counter subject, you have step down, step up. Step up, step down, step down, step up. Now that in itself would not be that incredibly remarkable. It's just, you know, it's a second step. We have that all the time. But then what happens? A fourth up. So step up, step down, fourth up. Counter subject, step down, step up, fourth up. Fourth up, sixth down. Step down, fourth up, third up. So now it gets a little bit complicated. This, the sixth down, turned around is a third up. B flat to D, down, B flat to D up. So a sixth and a third are inversions of each other. We have step up, step down, fourth up, sixth down. We have step down, step up, fourth up, third up. So let me take this second measure. I know it gets complicated. The second measure of the counter subject and play it just a little bit different. I'm playing exactly the same thing, except the last note I'm playing an octave lower than before. This is, and this is. You can already tell that this is much closer to. And now I'm going to turn this on its head, which will give me this. So if I turn this on its head and turn this third around, I have the beginning motive. I'm not saying that it's the same. I'm saying that it's derived from it. So are very clear variants of each other. So again, there's another sprout of the acorn. Good. So what happens in the first measure of the counter subject? This. Listen to this. It's the same thing, just in 16th notes instead of 8th notes. So again, a variant of this. So there we have to go one further and then back to find the variation of it. So we have this, the variation, turn around, repeat. The variant of the variant, the first variant, and then just repeated notes that kind of go parallel with the theme. So I hope this makes sense. If you had the music in front of you, it would be so much easier, but that's kind of difficult to do. That's why the first time I tried to do this was with Zoom, where we could share images and files, but Zoom and Facebook didn't like each other, so I wasn't going to try that again. So the theme comes from this. The counter subject comes from that. So in this fugue, whenever the theme comes up, the counter subject comes up. For example, when the third comes in, the third theme entrance, when the theme comes back the next time, which is actually the next measure in the top voice, when the theme comes in the next time, so The counter subject is the permanent sidekick of the main theme. So there again, you have the theme itself that comes out of this acorn, plus the counter subject that shows up every time the theme comes, that comes out of this acorn. So up to this point, everything that this music has, what was written in this music, comes from this main motive. Let me just shut my children off. You guys be quiet. Thank you. Okay, thank you. We're right next to the kitchen, and they're cooking in there. So, okay, anyway, so theme, counter subject, all come from this little theme, this little motive, and they show up all over the place. This fugue is special in that it has a second counter subject that also accompanies the theme all the time, and it goes like this. That's it. One more time. So what does that have to do with anything? The main theme, in the original key, starts like this, right? Okay. When the second theme comes in, this would be the actual direct answer, the so-called real answer, a fifth up or a fourth below. Sorry. But instead, Bach modifies that answer from a so-called real answer to a so-called tonal answer. And I'll show you why. That sounds really awkward. It doesn't sound good at all. So he does the following. Instead of playing a second up and a second down, he modifies that theme head to a third, which you will find in almost all fugues, that the second entrance, which is a fifth above or a fourth below, will be modified to fit the key. It's a so-called tonal answer, totally legitimate. So we have the original form, and then we have the tonal answer form. And depending where he is in the piece and where he is in the key, he uses both interchangeably. So now instead of a second up, a step up, we have a skip up, a third up, and back down. Why is this important? Because when you come to the second counter subject, what do you have? You have a third down and third up. So we take this, we turn it on its head, and we have the main material of the second counter subject. And then we have this, which is directly derived out of the theme. Runs parallel to the theme. So now we have the theme, we have the counter subject, and the second counter subject, all derived from this. Fugal exposition. All three themes have now had the fugal theme. And the whole material, everything that's in this piece has now been presented. The theme, the first counter subject and the second counter subject, and all can be traced back to this. So Schoenberg in the early 20th century calls this principle of composition developing variation, which means that you have a theme and you develop this theme into something different, into something different, into something different, but ultimately everything can be traced back to that one motive or that one theme. Beethoven uses this. What is it? How's it go? Sorry. Anyway, you can trace everything that happens in the piece to this, back to that little motive. Okay, Brahms uses that all the time. Beethoven is the master of it, and then it's one of the main compositional techniques of the Second Viennese School, which eventually leads to the 12-tone technique and serialism. So it's all here already in Bach, and Bach, of course, does it all the time as well. Now you do have what is, I guess, called episodes. Episodes are moments within the piece that don't have the fugal theme present. So let me show you this. We get to, this is measure 13, where the theme comes back in the top voice. That's the end of the theme. Now this sounds. This is, of course, the continuation of the 16th passage of the theme itself. And now he takes the element and sequences it. In the left hand, this happens. This was the theme. This is what he takes and sequences. Top motive, turn around. Then we come back to the theme. Okay, I'm going to make it short. Every time an episode happens, I don't know why this keeps popping up. Every time an episode happens, it is directly related to the theme itself. So basically, what you can take away from this fugue, this specific fugue, is that there is not one note written in this fugue, composed in this fugue, that you cannot trace back to this musical DNA, if you wish. Right? So we have our little oak, starts sprouting, variation, and all of a sudden you have a huge tree. That's how this little innocent motive became a fugue. Okay? So I'm going to attempt to play both the prelude and the fugue. I'm thoroughly under-practiced with this piece, but I'm going to do it anyway, just to give you an idea of, first of all, the beauty and actually the fun that this piece is. It's a fun piece. It actually has its moment of humor too. So here's the prelude and fugue in B flat major from the first book of the Walter Klavier. tricky little beast. Couple of little more things. I'm not going to play this. I've done my duty here. Couple of little things about this whole cycle and Bach's keyboard music in general. So it's called the well-timbered clavier, right? But of course, the clavier that Bach is talking about is not the same as the Steinway or Bösendorfer or whatever we have, Yamaha, that we have today. Those pianos weren't really developed and invented like this until the middle of the 19th century. Bach had a variety of keyboard instruments, most notably the harpsichord and the organ. Even within the family of the harpsichord and the organ, there are many, many different variants. He also had the so-called clavichord, which is a very, very soft instrument. The harpsichord didn't let you play different dynamics. You couldn't write a crescendo or decrescendo. The only way you could grow a sound was by adding notes. The clavichord lets you do that, but only somewhere between a quadruple pianissimo and a normal pianissimo. It's a very, very soft instrument. The organ, of course, you have all kinds of possibilities through the different stops and different registers that you have. So we don't really know what these pieces were written for, which instrument. And there are some pieces, this one, for example, is, that I played at the beginning, is much more organ-like than, for example, a harpsichord. This, with its bouncy energy, and works much, much better on the harpsichord, for example, than on the organ. So there's a fascinating recording by my wonderful teacher, Robert Levin, who recorded both books of the well-timbered clavier, and he chose different instruments for the different preludes and fugues, anywhere from a clavichord to a small one-manual harpsichord to a two-manual harpsichord, a bigger one, and to organ. It's absolutely fascinating. You can find excerpts of that recording on YouTube, and you can probably get it on things like Spotify or so, or Apple Music. It is absolutely fascinating. I told you about the live recording by Andras Schiff. Again, if you have any inclination to do so, please take 2 hours, sit down in a comfortable chair with either some good speakers or headphones and listen to that and watch it. It's absolutely spectacular. Well, that was it for now. And I thank you very much for watching. Okay, take care, everyone. Stay safe and sane, especially sane. Bye-bye.